Picture this. I'm standing in my own driveway, sweat still on my brow from unloading 20 grand worth of my worldly possessions, when a woman in blindingly white tennis shoes comes marching up like she's got a deed with her name on it. There's orange construction tape strung across my yard, and some kind of official-looking cease and desist letter is literally duct taped to my front door. That's right, duct tape. Classy move, huh? I mean, welcome to the neighborhood, right? You'd think I was moving into Fort Knox instead of a 2-acre patch of land in what's supposed to be quiet suburbia. She doesn't even say hello, just waves a clipboard at me like she's fencing with it. You're trespassing on HOA common area, she announces, voice all sharp and business. Now, this is the house I just closed on yesterday. My name's on the deed. My kids are staring out from the cab of the moving truck, wide-eyed and looking at me like, Dad, what the heck did you just get us into? And the air diesel fumes from the truck, a little whiff of pine needles, and now the unmistakable scent of trouble. I notice my surveyor stakes are missing. She moved them. She's actually trying to steal my land on move-in day. I look her in the eye. Ma'am, I own this property. She just smirks. Not the trail you don't. That's been ours for 15 years. And your little tree fort and fire pit illegal. You've got 48 hours to get rid of them. Swear you can't make this stuff up. What would you do if someone tried to claim your backyard before you even found your coffee maker? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, because I sure could have used backup right about then. Let me back up a sec and tell you how this whole circus started. 3 months earlier, I was sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 teenagers, Jake and Emma, counting pennies after a divorce that burned half my savings to the ground. 20 years in the Army, and all I wanted was a real home for my kids, a place where we could hit reset. So I hustled every IT contract I could find, skipped every luxury just to give them a shot at something better. Then I found this property, 2.3 acres, old farmhouse right up against the state forest. Listing photos had this walking trail winding through these big old oaks, looked like something out of a movie. I pictured teaching my kids to build a fire. Maybe even a little survival training like I picked up overseas. The seller, Dorothy, was an 80-year-old widow who knew everybody's name and kept chickens like they were family. The closing went down smooth, maybe too smooth. Her nephew zipped through the paperwork so fast you'd think he had somewhere better to be. No complications, he promised. Famous last words, right? That's when Margaret Thornfield walked into my life like the world's worst plot twist. HOA president, real estate agent, queen of the cul-de-sac. Imagine the most entitled soccer mom you can then give her actual power over your property lines. Her house looked like it belonged in a magazine circular drive, fake grass, so perfect it looked photoshopped. License plate HOA queen. Yeah, I wish I was joking. So, while my movers are hauling boxes, Margaret shows up with her laminated map of lies. You could see where she'd used correction fluid to redraw the property lines, but she held it like the 10 Commandments. This trail has been community property since we formed the HOA. She says, standing in my driveway, her tennis shoes squeaking on the gravel. Then came the kicker. Your structures violate architectural standards, $200 fine per day starting Monday. Kids' laughter from the backyard dies right there. 3 neighbors peek out their blinds, nobody steps up. Well, nobody except Frank Oldtimer across the street. He gives me this nod like, hang in there, kid. Margaret finishes her speech with, I have connections at the county, and lets the threat hang there thick as the humidity. 20 years in the military, you learn when someone's declaring war, and Margaret was coming for blood. She figured I'd fold. She picked the wrong veteran. The movers leave, and I'm surrounded by boxes, and my first enemy, right where my family sanctuary should have been. Margaret walks off all smug, probably already planning her next move. She had no idea I spent 2 decades learning to win when the odds looked impossible. 48 hours. Her countdown had begun. Monday morning, the assault started. Margaret filed her formal HOA complaint before most folks finished their coffee. Her book club turned into a surveillance squad, 3 women in matching sun visors, armed with digital cameras and measuring tapes, stalking my yard like it was a crime scene. They snapped photos of my garbage cans, measured my mailbox, counted every dandelion. Diane, nervous blonde, actually measured the gap between my fence posts. If you've never seen Suburban Warfare, this was it. Then came the paperwork. Margaret produced 3 notarized statements from neighbors swearing they'd used the trail for community recreation since 2008. Legal terms everywhere, she'd clearly been coached. There was a timeline for community maintenance and shared expenses, made it look official. But I knew a bluff when I saw one. Tuesday morning, I was at the county courthouse, neck deep in musty records and burned government coffee. Betty, the records clerk, she's seen every property fight since the 80s, helped me dig through a mountain of maps and documents. 6 hours later, gold HOA papers filed in 2015. Margaret's claims about 2008, 7 years too early. But the real win, my original 1987 property survey. Clean boundaries, compass, bearings. GPS coordinates, no wiggle room, the trail, all on my land. That night Frank walks over, says, "Son, my daddy built that trail in '63 with a borrowed bulldozer trying to reach the old fishing pond." Then he hands me aerial photos from the '50s private farm road decades before the neighborhood. Dorothy let people walk out of kindness, never signed away a thing. Margaret's been telling that story so long, I think she believes it herself, Frank says, shaking his head. Wednesday. I hire a surveyor, military-grade GPS, put certified markers every 50 feet. While Margaret's squad peeps from their porch, my guy marks the boundaries in orange flags, each one courtroom-grade evidence. I put up private property, no trespassing signs, and send Margaret a certified letter. Prove you have a legal easement or stay off my land. Her answer, Friday morning, 6 a.m., Diane's out there in a pink bathrobe and rain boots measuring my mailbox again. Federal mailbox regulations, sir. Yours might be over the limit. Lady at 6 in the morning and you're on postal property. From then on, I recorded everything. Margaret just moved from harassment into federal territory and didn't even know it. But Margaret wasn't done. Within a week, she dug up my divorce records public info, but still neighbors started whispering about my finances. Every time I passed her house, the smell of her vanilla candles and judgment followed me. Her book club morphed into a gossip factory, spreading rumors about my instability. At the grocery store, Diane tells the cashier military divorces can be devastating. Poor man's probably in over his head. Margaret's masterpiece. An emergency HOA meeting, cream-colored invitations, agenda packed with my crisis. 23 neighbors pile into her living room, perched on furniture so white it looked dangerous. Margaret's got PowerPoints, charts, property values, before and after sale prices, scaring homeowners with numbers. Then her cousin Bradley, real estate lawyer in a suit worth more than my truck, lectures us on prescriptive easements, adverse possession, the works. He wraps it up with Margaret's legal position is fortress strong. Mr. Thompson's destroying neighborhood harmony. But while she played prosecutor, I was doing recon. 3 houses sold in 2 years, all advertised private trail access. Margaret's commission $30,000 minimum, all from selling access to my land. Then I hit pay dirt. For 8 years, Margaret claimed an agricultural tax exemption on her land, pocketing $4,000 a year. But half her conservation area was actually on my property. 32 grand in tax fraud, plain as day on county maps. Everything made sense. Her crusade was about covering up her decade-long scam. That night I walked my trail, now armed with enough evidence to take down Margaret's suburban empire. I reach out to buyers duped by her trail ads. They threaten lawsuits, demand her license. I organize my case for the county and IRS. Margaret thinks she's fighting a property squabble. I'm prepping for war. 2 weeks later, only half the neighbors show up to her next meeting and 3 speak up for me. Margaret escalates, files a code enforcement complaint over my kid's treehouse. Officer Martinez comes by, takes one look and laughs. Sir, this is better built than most sheds. She's filed 47 complaints in 2 years. False reporting's a misdemeanor. We're just waiting for someone to press charges. Margaret had no clue she just handed me a federal case on a silver platter. She doubled down, forming a neighborhood safety patrol, 3 women sitting on the sidewalk, jotting down every car that passed my house. My daughter Emma called them my stalker fan club. But the final straw, Margaret blocks my driveway with her BMW just enough to make backing out dangerous. When I ask her to move it, she shrugs. Plan better if you want to leave. Frank swings by, tells me Margaret's falling apart. Her husband's been sleeping at his office, clients are filing complaints at her brokerage, and she's intercepting certified mail, which, by the way, is a federal crime. I realize Margaret's not just covering her scam anymore. She's fighting for her entire existence. That Sunday, I install pro-level security cameras, post a giant survey map for the whole street to see, and send Margaret a cease and desist stop, or face stalking and fraud charges. As I'm sorting through Dorothy's old basement boxes, I find a 1987 easement agreement utility access for 25 years expired in 2012, 3 years before the HOA even existed. The cornerstone of Margaret's lies gone. I call my lawyer. This is nuclear, she says. Margaret's entire legal foundation vaporized. I dig into county records, find out Margaret's new luxury listing, $850,000 house boasting private trail access. Her cut $24,000. She's defending a $60,000 scam built on my property. I realize if I don't act, she'll just move on to another victim. Frank shows up with Janet, a retired teacher. Margaret tried to bank her up with fake zoning complaints, and David, a tech worker, she sabotaged with forged letters. Turns out David has video proof Margaret forging neighbor signatures at her kitchen table. We spend the night piecing together her years of neighborhood terrorism. By the end, we have a case strong enough for the IRS, FBI, and county prosecutors combined. Attorney Sarah Jules lays out our battle plan, quiet title action, to lock in my boundaries, criminal complaints for fraud and harassment, and an IRS whistleblower submission. Meanwhile, Margaret's life implodes. Husband moves out. Book club disbands. Brokerage fires. Her and the neighborhood starts to see through her act. David teaches us how to timestamp every piece of evidence with modern apps, making our case airtight. The counterattack comes fast. Margaret's world unravels. Saturday, she directs an illegal chainsaw crew to clean up a hazard on my property. They end up felling a tree onto her own BMW, blocking the street, costing her $2,000 in fines, and creating video evidence of criminal conspiracy. The police arrive, citations are handed out, and Margaret's desperate explanations just dig her hole deeper. That afternoon, her luxury buyers pull out after witnessing the chaos. She's fired from her brokerage, loses her real estate license, and gets caught trying to bribe the county surveyor twice. The FBI is involved now, and even her loyal allies bail on her. Then, in a final twist, she starts attacking my kids online with doctored images and fake accusations crossing every line of decency and legality. The community rallies around us. Frank organizes a neighbor watch. Janet alerts the schools. David preserves digital evidence. Margaret hires a private investigator who reports her for attempted stalking. By Friday, she's facing federal charges for bribery, cyber harassment of minors, and criminal fraud. Her bail is revoked, and the woman who started this war, over 50 feet of walking trail, now sits in a federal cell. The real show comes at the emergency city council meeting. Margaret, now a ghost of her former self, tries to spin her last defense. But the county surveyor, FBI, and police chief destroy her case live on TV. Margaret's arrested in front of the entire town. Her last words, "I'll destroy all of you, even if it destroys me." But all she destroyed was herself. 6 months later, Margaret's in prison. I get a 15% IRS whistleblower reward, enough to build my kids a new workshop. The old HOA dissolves. We start a new volunteer-run association. Neighbors become friends. Kids build forts instead of filing complaints. And our troubled trail becomes the heart of a real community. Even Dorothy's nephew, racked by guilt, sends a $5,000 check to help another vet fight a property scam. Margaret's final legacy. The state passes HOA reform laws inspired by our case. Now, it's a lot harder for another HOA tyrant to ruin someone's life. And our neighborhood's annual trail festival, held right on that strip of land she tried to steal, brings together families from miles around. It's living proof. You stand up to a bully. You don't just save your own land, you help everybody else too. So if you've got an HOA horror story, drop it in the comments. The wildest ones might make it into a future episode. Share your experience, help others spot the warning signs, and hit subscribe if you want to keep fighting for what's right. Somewhere out there, another Margaret is measuring a mailbox at 6 a.m., and the only way to stop them is to shine a light on every dirty trick. Your property rights are worth fighting for. Your community is stronger than you think. And sometimes karma needs a little help from federal law enforcement. Thanks for listening. Next time I'll tell you about the city councilman who tried to steal my water rights with a fake environmental lawsuit. Stay tuned.